Hey guys, Nike here with my thoughts on the Bladesworn for Beta 2. Overall, I felt a ton better about the Bladesworn in this beta than the previous. While the over-the-top damage in Beta 1 was fun, the changes to the Bladesworn playstyle made a less spammy, more fluid, and better looping rotation. I speak for many PvE players when I say that a looping, repeatable, and fluid rotation is a significant factor in whether or not a spec feels fun, or whether it gets labeled the cursed term clunky. The full DPS version of the build, at the time of this recording, is benching around 38k, while the banner version I've seen as high as 36k. This is probably acceptable for the banner build, as it would out DPS the Berserker banner build, which is a fair trade-off since it is harder to play and it totally sacrifices any CC contribution to the group. However, the full DPS version at 38k is a bit underwhelming as a pure DPS build in the current meta. In a potential future world, long term, where there's no nerfs, or when there's no more banners, let's say banners got nerfed, the DPS version would be far below what a meta tier pure DPS build would provide to their teams. In a world with banners, however, the spec still would have a place in the meta, but the pure DPS version is probably going to be left outside. The tricky part, as always, is figuring out how to get more damage out of a pure DPS warrior without buffing the banner version unintentionally, and without making the utility skills on the build into an obnoxious DPS increase. The pistol, while unchanged itself, has become part of the DPS rotation due to changes with traits that I'll discuss later. The Axe Pistol version of the build outperforms the Axe version, and the clever interaction between Pistol 4 and 5 is a very skill-rewarding one. I predict that a less experienced player may in fact do better on the Axe version simply because the rotation is easier and requires less thought, while the experienced player will be rewarded for mastering the use of the pistol. This is a great thing from my point of view, as it creates a specific build incentive across a spectrum of player skill. The next big change is the change to flow generation, as well as the faster stocking of charges, and this is a huge positive to me. Flow management in the first beta was annoying and required pretty significant effort to maintain, and it sort of took away from the immersion of combat. It felt like you were playing a mini game that stood outside the game. This beta, I would argue that flow being easy to manage was far superior. It let the player focus on combat and gameplay and not managing the mini game. However, this does have one negative discussed below in the utility skills. Obviously, the faster stacking of charges is a huge positive, as it cuts down on all that AFK 0 APM gameplay time. So let's talk about the utility skills. Unfortunately, currently none of the Bladesworn utility skills have a place in the PvE meta, really. None of them are DPS increases. Personally, I would rather that there are no utility skills in the entire game that are DPS increases on any profession, and that they are all used for situational utility rather than DPS. But it unfortunately does create the situation that we currently have, where there's no opportunity cost for bringing banners, because nothing else you can really bring besides the banners matters that much. However, that said, I do believe players are a bit over-focused on Golem DPS rotations. As it stands, the Bladesworn has no CC in PvE on its weapons or Gunsaber kit to speak about, so the ability to take 2 CC utility skills, which also grant a situational DPS increase like Kick, is pretty underrated in the pure DPS role in actual raids. However, the lack of CC potential, especially in the banner version, is somewhat worrisome, as the banner version has literally no CC in its kit. This is made up for by the superior DPS compared to the Berserker. So there are advantages to each spec in a fight-by-fight basis. For example, at Samurag, where you need a lot of CC, you will probably prefer to play Berserker. And a fight like, say, Deimos, where burst damage matters and you don't necessarily need any CC, obviously you'd want to go with Bladesworn. I believe that's an ideal situation. However, if the damage of Bladesworn were to be toned down to parity with the Berserker, the lack of CC could be crippling. Next, all the PvE Bladesworn builds are using To the Limit for a healing skill to get a flow boost at the start of the combat, but really that's underwhelming and kind of a waste of a heal skill. The Bladesworn heal is actually pretty interesting, but I would argue giving it a cast time is too punitive to make it see play in PvE. Making it instant cast is a possible solution, along with adding temporary additional flow when you consume the second charge while active, in addition to the boons it gives you. The flow stabilizer utility skill was previously used when flow management was challenging, but now it serves very little purpose. As I said before, I find the changes to flow and ammunition stocking a net positive, but it does leave the flow stabilizer skill in particular in this place where you just want to know why it exists and what it's supposed to do. All right, now I'll talk just like random miscellaneous weird stuff about the spec I want to mention. So right now, Dragon Slash can be interrupted by your weapon swap, your weapon stow, or any of your Gunsaber skills. I totally get and understand why the ability to cancel Dragon Slash with weapon swap or weapon stow is necessary, but I strongly object to canceling your burst skill with a weapon skill. With all normal burst skills on Warrior as well as primal bursts, if you press a weapon skill during the cast animation of your primal burst skill, the weapon skill is queued and will be cast as soon as the burst skill is done. But with Dragon Slash, it immediately ends the animation of Dragon Slash to use the skill. Needless to say, in a class whose DPS comes so heavily weighted on Dragon Slash, if you accidentally interrupt your Dragon Slash even once, it is absolutely punishing. This is especially punishing for players with high ping who have to skill queue and press their skills slightly earlier to minimize the impact of the ping. I do assume that this is an unintended thing because no other burst skill or primal burst skill is interruptible with weapon skills, and it's probably something the devs will just go ahead and fix before the game goes live. So then next up is, my next thought is that Gunsaber skills 2, 3, and 4 have very little identity. They are all used as a DPS increase in the rotation after using Dragon Slash and before swapping to your base weapon set. Artillery Slash is the highest DPS of the three, so it's given priority usage. But by and large, the mechanics of the skills and the utility they bring is almost totally irrelevant and ignorable. I'm not sure this is necessarily a problem or even worth any time of the devs to change them, but it is something to note that Gunsaber skills 2, 3, and 4 all feel like they're identical skills with different animations, compared to Axe 2, 3, and 4, or Greatsword 2, 3, and 4, which feel like very different skills that are used in very different ways at very different times. And then lastly, I will once again request that hopefully the devs can make some visual upgrades to the Gunsaber. The Gunsaber skin itself is continues to be a bit underwhelming. I do understand that this is totally subjective and that some players like the understated sort of look. I totally get that. But for me, when in my video, when I give my opinions, I'm going to say it's underwhelming. It does have a nice particle trail when you swing it with a skill, and so I just request that the particle trail be present while moving. And additionally, the dragon trigger animation could be beefed up when you're sitting there crouched low and charging up your Dragon Slash. It has like a little bit of an effect, but nothing. But it's very understated. If the devs are gonna go full Dragon Ball Z, go full Dragon Ball Z and make the character glow brightly as the charges are built. And when you're at max charges, you should be like almost exploding. Overall, I don't expect the Gunsaber to be anywhere near as flashy as Hollow Forge, nor should it be. But it is my position that it is currently erring on the side of being a bit too understated. We do, after all, have to give up our hard-earned legendary skins for what essentially amounts to a slightly better than a Karma Vendor tier skin. And that's a bit of a painful trade-off in a game that is so strongly built around cosmetic appearances. So anyway, guys, that is my thoughts on Beta 2, Bladesworn, and I hope that you guys found this video helpful. If you have any comments on your thoughts on Bladesworn, please leave them in the comments below, and I'd be very interested to hear what you guys' impressions were of the spec, this beta. But other than that, thank you guys so much. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.